Good evening. How are you guys? It is about 5:30 on the 23rd of June, and this is going to have to be a quick video. I'm just happy to be able to come on. Oh, how's my sound? Let me do a sound check real quick. Check, check. How is it? How is the sound? If anybody's here, no one's here yet. Let me just do my quick little disclaimer. Everything I say is simply my opinion for the sake of hoping to start a conversation and open up a discussion and learn something, be educational. And all my videos are made for YouTube, and it's an infotainment platform. So, as you know, if you've been watching my channel for a while, I have been bent about the politics lately. And then just since Barry Morphew's arrest, I feel like I need to take a break from the politics. It's just crazy, is it not? With bombs and threat of WW3. It's ridiculous. I honestly think, and I don't feel like I'm the only one that thinks this, I honestly believe that all of this noise, like literally Donnie Two Dolls would rather blow up the world than have people focus on his involvement with Jeffrey, little e. So where's my thumb? Please hit your like button if you'd be so kind. And make sure you're still subscribed in the event that you are subscribed. If you're not subscribed, please consider just subbing up. It's a great way to help a channel. And share a video of mine with somebody that you think might like it. Turn on your notification bell to ring. So there is a 131-page arrest affidavit for Barry Morphew in the first arrest when they had to set him loose. They didn't have to, but it was a very intelligent decision, I believe, that they did that so that they could retry him after having more of an opportunity to locate Suzanne Morphew's remains to prove that she was deceased. So I'm so glad that they did that. As concerned as I was that he was going to get away with it, because like I said yesterday, I definitely think he's guilty. However, it's important to maintain reasonable, innocent until proven guilty in a court of law, that whole thing, right? We do need to be respectful of that, of course. But in this 131 pages of the arrest affidavit, and I literally made myself sick last night trying to read the entire thing in one sitting. It was riveting. I couldn't put it down. I'll put a link to it in the description. I couldn't believe I'd never seen it until yesterday. But there was a lot in it that was profound, absolutely profound. For the most part, the detectives, and I just have to say, they did stellar work in this case, absolutely stellar. It was almost as if they were making up for the really poor work in the Watts case, in my opinion. And I do think it's some of the same people, even though it's different counties. The BCI, BCI? CBI, Colorado Bureau of Investigation. It's like their state FBI, basically. There were some of the CBI detectives, agents that worked on both cases, that worked on the Watts case and worked on the Morphew case. And I know that from talking to one of the detectives myself. And she is one of the detectives that's mentioned in the 131-page affidavit. They even go into a lot of the follow-up that they did on tips that people gave them. And so as I was reading it, I was like, wow, is my tip going to be in here? Is my name going to be in here? Or maybe as anonymous? A lot of the tips are, of course, from anonymous, people that wish to remain anonymous. And it was 5 years ago almost, so I don't even remember. I would imagine that I asked to remain anonymous because, you don't want to get targeted. Oh, Anna Bees, I did not notice you're here. Thanks for coming in, girlfriend. Hi, Jazz and everyone. I was watching your Wayne Wu vid. I just happened to go to your channel and saw you were live right now. Oh, that's awesome. That is so cool. Yeah, I finally found that the affidavit video. Is that the one you're talking about? The one I was trying to find at the end of my live yesterday. And then, of course, I found it immediately once I wrapped up, and it was alive. So that's why I couldn't find it. I figured it was a pre-recorded. Yeah, that's the one. So this 130 lawsuit, I would almost say there's no way I could read through it, but maybe I should try. That would be profound. The arrest affidavit. Sorry, let me explain. Because I might be able to break it up into, like, I don't know, 3 different lives, like parts 1, 2, and 3, because it's some rich information. But I was trying to find this one part that I mentioned in the title because it's just got me on the verge of tears ever since I saw it. And this is on page 4 of 129. And I have this habit of reading things from back to front. So when I read this last night, I did read the entire thing from front to back. When I say entire thing, it's 131 pages. So there were a lot of pages that I just kind of skimmed. But I was riveted. I've never, ever in my life read that many pages in one sitting. Like, I couldn't get up. I kept wanting to set it down and do other things, even run to the bathroom. And I literally could not set it down until I finished it. And then I felt nauseous. And then when I picked it up right before coming on to this live, I was reading it from back to front, trying to find this one part that I thought I remembered being towards the end, the part about the footprint in the bucket of the BOBCAT. Did you catch that in the title, you guys? Hey, Hellaby. And my cursor, of course, disappeared on me right before I came on live. So I cannot highlight your comments. I could try to highlight one and hopefully not bump things and mess things up, but I'm going to just leave that alone because that is such a hassle. So yeah, this footprint in the bucket of the BOBCAT, I missed that. I never knew about that 5 years into this case. And I just found that out last night. And then, like I said, when I was looking for that part to share with you guys, I think it was here. So it's 131 pages of a document, but the arrest affidavit itself is 129 pages, and it's on page 4. And I'm just going to read it to you because it's so chilling. It is so chilling. I hope I didn't lose it. Where is it? Yeah, that Santa Cruz mountain bike that Suzanne owned could have cost anywhere between $5,000 and $15,000. Is that so crazy? That's an expensive mountain bike. Oh, where did it go? And brace yourself. I'd say major trigger warning. Why does it have to do that? Why does it have to disappear on me? I had it all pulled up and queued and ready to read to you guys. How are you anyway? Let me catch up with you. How are both of you? Good evening. Just got the notification you're live. Yay. It's going to have to be a short one, unfortunately, but I'm just happy to get on and to see you guys. Thank you so much for being here. I might fall asleep. I worked last night and haven't slept yet. Oh my goodness. Well, I hope you don't have to work tonight. Man, they really took Barry Morphew's words and used them against him at the end. Maybe I'll read you that part after I find this part about the footprints. How did it disappear on me like that? It's not even that big of a deal, so maybe I should just try to um, move on. Oh, it is so dreadful, this whole thing. So I think that he buried her on his own property. I mentioned that in the end of yesterday's live, and I've never been so decisive about that. I think I was already thinking that before I then saw this part about the footprint, because I didn't see the part about the footprint until after my live. And then the footprint inside the bucket of the Bobcat, it's where they talk about the Bobcat and the new blade for it. And that absolutely convinced me. But do you guys remember the part in the case when it was early in the searching? If you paid attention to this back then, 5 years ago when it happened, and Barry Morphew was searching with like a crew of volunteers, and he just suddenly threw himself on the ground and proceeded to just lay there for close to 30 minutes and kind of like throwing a tantrum, being very emotional. And people were like, okay, that's weird, but how would you respond if your spouse was missing? And then I quickly, back then, 5 years ago, I quickly thought, I wonder if there was like drops of blood or some type of evidence that he was trying to hide by just laying on top of it. And then again, it was just yesterday that I thought maybe that's where the earth had been disturbed if he did bury her on their property. And I'm convinced that he did, because why wouldn't he, Dang it. Let me see if I can find this part about the footprint. I know it's here. And you know what? I'm just going to go right to the very, very beginning, because it was really close to the beginning. Very, very close to the beginning. Not that close. Sorry for the difficulty here. It's got to be right here. It's got to be. It seems like things just try to disappear on you sometimes, doesn't it? Fireflies is here. Yay! So nice to see you again, Fireflies. It was lovely to meet you yesterday. So I'm trying to find the part about footprints in the bucket of the Bobcat. And we know that Barry was like a little boy with that Bobcat. He wanted to keep it with him at all times, but probably also because he was worried about some evidence being discovered on it. Dang it all. This is like just driving me nuts. I am going to have to give up on this in just a second if I can't find it. Oh, here it is. As soon as I say that, phew. Okay. It's a very small paragraph. It's only 3 lines. And I thought that it was like twice that many lines in the paragraph. So I'll just read the one paragraph. Thank goodness. That was annoying AF. And it is the second paragraph of page 7, which is page 5 of the 129-page document. It starts with Deputy Brown was walking in the driveway when Deputy DeFurio told him that there were barefoot marks inside of the bucket on the Bobcat. Deputy Brown went with him to examine and found that the cutting blade on the bucket of the Bobcat appeared to be newly replaced, along with the nuts and bolts. It literally makes me so sick to read this stuff. It's just nauseating. Absolutely nauseating. So Barry Morphew basically like tried to blame the chipmunks, wild animals, and God for what he did to his wife. And I have so much respect for these detectives in their bedside manner, in their ability to write this report. It's a phenomenal report. It's so good. And there's so much information in it, but basically they are just very straightforward in describing to Barry the things that he has said to them, and then asking him to explain how that makes sense. So let me get all the way to the end, get to the end of this document where they kind of do their summarization. I'll read a little bit of that. This is where I'll start. Are you ready? This is wild. This is the very end, towards the very end of the 129-page document. It's the bottom of 125. Barry initially blamed a mountain lion for Suzanne's death upon being notified of her bicycle recovery. That was as soon as he arrived to talk to law enforcement when he first got back from Broomfield, and he jumps out of his truck and he's like, "Is that it? Is that her bike? Is that where you found it? Oh my God." And he's just acting so bizarre. And then he says, "Maybe a lion?" And the sheriff's deputy is like, "Lying? What?" And Barry says, "Maybe a lion?" And the sheriff is still like, "Lying?" It's really funny. And then he's like, "No, a cat, a lion, a cat." But again, the symbolism too of the Bobcat, right? The little excavator or backhoe or whatever you call those little things. I mean, he's had a miniature one. It was cute. I always wished I had one, but I wouldn't do with it what he did with it. Okay, so Barry initially blamed a mountain lion for Suzanne's death upon being notified of her bicycle recovery. In 2021, Barry blamed the turkeys for why he did not have veggie soup with Suzanne during lunch on Saturday, May 9th. The deer for why his tranquilizer gun was used to explain the needle sheath recovered in the dryer, and a chipmunk for why he was running around his house after arriving home at 2:44 p.m. and the firing a gun of a .22 caliber to describe his violence towards Suzanne that afternoon, and the caliber of the tranquilizer darts. For his trip on May 10th, Barry explained his left turn on Highway 50 to explain the truck movement because of a bull elk sighting at 4:30 a.m. from 2 miles down the road, a left turn that placed him at the scene of Suzanne's helmet. Barry cannot provide a last sighting of Suzanne. This is chilling. only labored breathing similar to a snore, which is consistent with her being tranquilized. Barry describes her as being drunk that afternoon, which matches the effects of the tranquilizer after a few minutes. He says he is running around the house, most likely chasing Suzanne while she is conscious. Barry had admitted that he had taken Suzanne's phone from her at least twice in the past to try to monitor or control what she was doing. There's no phone activity for Suzanne after 2:30 p.m. on Saturday, which is out of the norm for her typical behavior, and an abrupt end following her 59 communications with Jeff Lieber that morning and afternoon. By around 2:30 on Saturday, May 9th, it had become clear that Barry could not control Suzanne's insistence on leaving him, and he resorted to something he had done his entire life: hunt and control Suzanne like he had hunted and controlled animals. Barry told investigators early on that he blamed alcohol for Suzanne's change of behavior and her distant unlovingness to him. Though she was not a heavy drinker, Barry used alcohol, drugs, and chemo throughout his interviews to describe Suzanne's independence and distancing from him, saying it was every day that last week. And I'll get caught up with your comments in just a second, you guys. Barry finally blamed God for Suzanne's death after being informed of the affair as a form of judgment on her, and he stated repeatedly that God allowed this to happen. Barry told the FBI and the CBI numerous times no evidence exists, which infers he knows what happened to the evidence in this case. When the Ritters called Barry at around 5 p.m. on Sunday, the Ritters are the next door neighbors, the 72-year-old woman that he kind of manipulated into calling 911, her and her husband. When the Ritters called Barry at around 5 p.m. on Sunday to tell Barry they could not find Suzanne, Barry was in his hotel room and had been there since about 12:40 p.m., so over 4 hours. However, he should not be there per his alibi to be out of town for an emergency job in Broomfield. Barry told the Ritters he was at the job site. He told the FBI, CBI, and CCSO he was at the job site. He left his room, took tools out of his truck, and put them in the lobby to make it look like he was returning from the site. Barry made very little attempt to contact Suzanne on his way home, or to look around his house or the bike scene, because he already knew what happened to her. Setting the tools out that day was similar to what happened earlier that morning when Suzanne's bicycle was placed on the incline, as Deputy Brown commented. I started to question if something criminal had occurred, as it looked like the bike was purposely thrown in this location. As of May 4th, 2021, Suzanne Morphew has not been located. And then they go on to sign off, basically asking for an arrest warrant. So, yeah, it's just pretty wild the way they correlate everything that he says happened, or the way he correlates everything with a wild animal. But it's great how they pick up on that theme. It's almost like a fairy tale or something, you know, like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs with the chipmunks and the deer and the bunnies and the skunk and everything else. But another thing I wanted to say is that yesterday I had stated that I have often wondered if Barry might have moved Suzanne to Colorado to have her isolated so that he could do this type of thing, that maybe he was planning it way ahead of time. And she did not want to move to Colorado. She was devastated to move away from her friends. He basically forced the issue. Part of why he did it was because, and I had forgotten about this, he'd gotten to a physical altercation with a man over a job site, and he was being sued for that. So that probably hurt his reputation a lot in this small town. And so he wanted to get away from the stress, I would think. But also, it's extremely typical that abusers want to isolate their victims. So even if they're not intending on taking their lives, and honestly, I don't think a lot of abusers that take their partner's lives, I think a lot of them do it accidentally. I don't think that a lot of them intend to take the person's life when it happens, that things get out of hand, that's why it's so dangerous. That's why child abuse and domestic violence are so dangerous, is it's easy for things to get out of hand. It's easy for something to happen accidental, like if you're used to hitting your partner, but then one time you hit them and it hits their head into some broken glass or something, let's say. um, really easy for accidents to happen. And then typically when that happens, people want to cover it up. People panic, and then, they're not going to come clean. And then it looks more premeditated than accidental. And, accidental is a lower punishment, basically, when you're dealing with the courts. I'm wondering if they have such a preposterous amount of evidence on Barry that he won't decide to do a plea agreement. I mean, they don't have the death penalty in Colorado, and his attorney, what's her name? Iris Etten. That's his old attorney. She was extremely expensive, and I think he's dwindled his finances down. So he has a much less expensive attorney this time around. And, he hasn't had Suzanne and his in laws to finance him, basically. So he's been um, more on his own financially. Okay, here we go. I don't work tonight. Oh, good. And I do need to wrap up. I hear the baby crying in the background. Can you guys hear him? He's such an adorable little cutie. So, Elby. Oh, thank you, Helby, or for Fireflies, for reminding me that Elby is, I think, how the name is said. Thanks for Fireflies. It was lovely to meet you too. You all, I dig a pool. Haha, I love water. How could anyone even shoot a chipmunk? I know, I love chipmunks. They're one of my favorite animals. And, you know, these are the ways that the lying liars out themselves. Barry had this cockamamie story that he was chasing chipmunks around outside the house when they were asking him why his cell phone movement was darting around outside the house. So essentially, I think that he shot her with the tranquilizer gun. I'm sorry to say this, and please, trigger warning. I think he sexually assaulted her once the tranquilizer set in. And then I think he shot her with a regular type of gun. And there was a shell casing. I think it was actually an unspent bullet on the floor in their bedroom. But I also think I remember there being a bullet hole like in the door frame of their bedroom. But then there's this information in the affidavit about the sheets being stripped off of one of the girls' beds. And the girls had been gone for a few days on a camp trip. And neither of them were even living there. The 16-year-old Macy was living at her boyfriend's house because of COVID and germs and the chemotherapy that her mom had been getting. I think she had her last treatment, or she had a clean bill of health on April 30th, just 10 days before going missing. And then the older one, Mallory, was away at college, but maybe she was going to come home for the summer. I don't know. But neither of the girls was living there. And I don't think they were expecting them to stay the night when they came back to town either. I don't know. I'll have to go over that more carefully, that information. But what I was going to say, part of the information in the affidavit that I wasn't aware of is that Mallory or Macy's bed, probably Macy since she had been living at home more recently, that one of the beds was stripped. And that I think it was the boyfriend that told law enforcement that that was really odd and out of character. Of course, Suzanne was a meticulous housekeeper and that she kept the beds made. And the fact that it was stripped led law enforcement to think that something might have happened in that room. So I don't know. But the reason why I think that he violated her is because law enforcement asked him point blank, why do you think Suzanne might have disappeared? Why would somebody have done this to her? And his response was initially the one word, sex. And they wrote this in the report because that's what they thought. They thought that he violated her because right after that, he said the R word. And I'm telling you, the lying liars, they always tell on themselves. I bet he will never plead guilty because of his daughters, but I don't know. So his daughters, the youngest one was 16 at the time, so she's 21 now. And the older one would be, somewhere probably around mid 20s, Mallory. And you could be absolutely right about that for Fireflies. Now that I think about it, the way you phrased it, yeah, he probably doesn't want his kids to see him that way. He doesn't want to be the bad guy. And he wants to be their hero, basically. So, yeah, you're probably absolutely right. My thought process in thinking a plea agreement is simply that it's such a preposterous mountain of evidence. But, maybe there's always hope for a mistrial, right? Like in the Alec Baldwin case, just a technicality. And that's probably what they'll bank on. That's probably what they'll shoot for. Enjoy baby time. Yeah. I'll wrap up here in just a second. Let me look at my notes because there was a little bit more. There was that employee that he left the hotel room for her to stay in, that people wondered if she had had an affair with Barry. She was an attractive woman. She said that there were insurance documents in the garbage of the hotel room. And so that made a lot of people think that Barry was vying for a life insurance policy with Suzanne's demise. And that could be why her remains were then left at that location south of where they live. I think it was like an hour south. It could be that he was trying to collect insurance and they were like, well, she's just missing. We don't even know that she's deceased. So then he was hoping that somebody might find her remains. She would be declared deceased and then he could cash out. So, yeah. The $100,000 that they borrowed, I guess, was from Suzanne's brother. And Suzanne wanted to pay him back. And Barry felt entitled to keep the money. He didn't think that they should have to. And that was, I believe, why he put up that $100,000 reward in his ridiculous 26-minute Oh Suzanne video, was just really to stick it to them and stick the knife in their heart and twist it and just say, you know, it's $100,000. Like, that's a lot of money to most of us. That's a huge, huge, exorbitant chunk of change to most of us. But for a family of millionaires, not a big deal, right? So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. And thanks for being here. This is a short one. Love and light. I hope to come on tomorrow. I hope that you guys have a great night. Drink your water, eat your protein, eat your veggies. And thanks for being here. Just be yourself, and let's just keep praying that this bombing doesn't escalate into a war. Let's just keep hoping that it doesn't. Yeah, thanks, you guys. See you very soon. Let's see if this is going to work. End stream. There we go. Take care.